Hello there everyone, welcome back. Today I thought I'd show you one of my routines to remove the background from a picture and how to create simple Star Wars style titles from scratch. Now I want to say that this is only one of many ways to remove backgrounds, it's just the one I found to work best for me in the most cases. This technique uses a similar approach to what's called luminance keying, so we're essentially creating a manual mask based on brightness levels, which means you need a solid color background that is lighter or darker than your subject. No problem for me since I shoot most of the pictures that I end up editing on a solid color background, and I highly recommend you do too, because any background reflects on the subject, and making sure those reflections are even and consistent ensures your final edited picture looks polished and professional. Quick side note, I now have a Patreon linked in the description where you can get early access to new videos in this series, as well as live editing sessions with me, so have a look. And with that said, let's get started. Go down into the bottom right corner and duplicate your picture. Then right click on the new layer and find Add Alpha Channel. And with the top layer selected, let's go to Colors and Levels and crush the highlights by pulling the white triangle towards the black. Especially around complex shapes such as leaves, or in this case the curves here, adding contrast helps separate the subject from the background. Let's also crush the blacks a touch for even more contrast, and hit OK. Now let's find the threshold effect in the color menu. And this effect divides the image into pure black and pure white, which we need to create our mask. Grab the middle handle here and move it towards the black to color more of the subject white. And fine-tune it to where you have a clear outline. The basic goal here is to capture all the detail on the edges, especially complex shapes such as leaves or grass like I have in my legacy builds, for example. If you can isolate those details with something like this technique, it'll save you lots of manual tracing. Straight lines like the border on this mock aren't a priority as they are super easy to trace manually real quick. Also, don't worry about anything happening inside the shape of the subject. All we're looking for are the separating edges. And to clean up this mess, let's go ahead and use the pen tool and paint any white specks beyond the subject black. The better contrast you have in your raw picture, the less you'll have to correct here. But if it's a little tedious on your first attempt, don't worry, take notes and improve on your next try. Now let's paint everything inside the subject white. Once again, this should be little work if you set up your picture well. Next, switch to black and paint everything outside of our subject black. Now let me decrease the opacity or just turn off a layer here. And I'll duplicate the base image and make it really bright using the levels so I can see where the border is. And using the lasso tool, I'll trace that real quick. Close the selection and hit Enter. And now I'll delete the bright reference layer we just made. Enable the mask layer again, and now let's fill the selection with white. Invert the selection using Ctrl-I on the keyboard. Invert the colors by clicking X and paint everything outside the selection black. Sweet. Select None or Shift-Ctrl-A to remove the selection. Correct any little bits flying around here. And I think that's about it. Sweet. Actually, there's a bit left here. Here we are. Let's go up to Filters, Gaussian Blur, and leave it at the default value. We just want to soften those edges. And now you can go one of two ways. Either use the magic wand tool and select the white, disable the black and white layer and right click the base image, then find add layer mask. Make sure that selection is checked and create a mask from the selection we just made. A layer mask is the easier way to go and it works about the same as what I'll do instead now. I've just become used to using the black and white layer right away instead of a layer mask and a new background layer. So let's go to color to alpha. And white is selected by default, so it removes that and reveals the model underneath. Basically what the layer mask does, just in reverse. Let's right click our top layer and select alpha to selection. Now we have our new background selected, and we can, for example, add a gradient. I like a very dark grey to black for this one, but you go with whatever you vibe with. All my legacy builds have a dark green to black gradient, for example. Hit enter to apply the gradient and remove the selection. And there we are. Now there's a little more space on the right here than the left, so let me crop the pic real quick. And now let's quickly create a Star Wars style title before we wrap it up for today. So let's select the text tool in the toolbox or by clicking T on the keyboard. Draw a text box. Make sure that white is the foreground color or select it in the text color box here. And write out your desired title text. In my case, it's The Phantom Apprentice. For the title text, I like to use a font called Next Art, but you use whatever you like. And I like to space this main title text a little in the tool settings here on the left. And click any of the rectangles on the edge of the text box to crop it to just the text. Change the size at your heart's content. And now let's go up to Image, Guides, by percent, and vertical 50%, hit OK. And guidelines are magnetic, so the center and edges of a layer will snap to it when nearby. So it's super easy to center the text here perfectly. Create a new layer. Let me name that text frame for convenience. And now find the rectangular selection. Enable rounded corners. And depending on the resolution of your image, you may want to adjust the radius here, so just give it a shot. See what works. And let's draw a selection around our title. And see that you get even spacing all around. And do this as pixel perfect as you like. Select the fill tool and fill the selection with white. Head to select, shrink, and shrink your selection roughly by the thickness of your letters. And then hit delete to remove the selected white. To check how thick your letters are, you can use the rectangular selection or the measure tool and just click and drag and it'll tell you the pixels in the bottom line. And this is pretty good, I think. Let's draw another text box and type LEGO Star Wars. Use the font Distant Galaxy. Increase the size to your liking. Actually, not to your liking. Let's move it down here. And remove the white spacing real quick. And let's match the text size to the thickness of the frame. And line up the end of the L and with that the S on the other end. And there we go. Now draw a selection where the frame covers the text. Make sure that the frame layer is selected and hit delete. Sweet. Right click the top text layer and click merge down. Same with the next one. And now we have our whole title in one layer. Let's invert that to black. Right click and find alpha to selection. And let's slap a gradient on that title as well. White to light grey here in my case. Something like that. Hit enter to apply the gradient and use Shift-Control-A to remove the selection. And I recommend you use black for the text before you do the gradient, otherwise you might end up with white fringing around the text where the alpha selection didn't quite reach. Now to finish it off, I'll quickly grade the picture, and while I do that, let me say that I created building instructions for a slice of my Mandalore mock in the style of LEGO Star Wars line. So if you're looking to put a sweet Clone Wars display on your shelf, the building instructions are available on Rebrickable, and you can find a link to that and my Patreon in the description. And with that, I think we can call this picture done. I hope this video was useful. If so, feel free to share it around. And if you now want to learn how to edit lightsabers, be sure to check out the video in the end card here. And until next time, as usual, keep breaking.